We will examine the agreements reached, the impact of lifting sanctions on Syria, and the strategic implications for the United States. With an objective approach, we will break down the facts to understand this pivotal moment in global geopolitics. Trump's arrival in Riyadh was a high-profile event. Air Force One landed escorted by Saudi F-15 fighter jets, greeted with a ceremony featuring red carpets and top-tier hospitality. This visit, part of a 4-day Gulf tour including Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, aims to strengthen the alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia, a country critical for its oil wealth, regional influence, and financial capacity. The first focus of the visit was economic. Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman announced deals worth $600 billion in sectors like defense, rare minerals, and technology. Some sources suggest Trump is pushing to increase this to $1 trillion. These agreements involve Saudi investments in U.S. companies, which could create jobs, particularly in the arms industry, and bolster strategic sectors like technology. For instance, arms contracts ensure long-term revenue for U.S. manufacturers, while investments in rare minerals reduce reliance on China. Analytically, these investments benefit the United States by driving economic growth and diversifying trade partners. However, they raise questions about the risks of relying heavily on a single ally, especially in a volatile global context. The second and highly significant point was Trump's announcement on May 13th, during a business forum in Riyadh after talks with the Crown Prince, of lifting U.S. sanctions on Syria. In place since 1979 and tightened in 2011 under the Caesar Act, these sanctions isolated Syria from the global financial system, restricting its access to trade, investment, and international aid. Their removal aims to facilitate the reconstruction of a country ravaged by years of civil war, with an estimated cost of $400 billion for basic infrastructure, according to the UN. Additional data indicates that lifting sanctions will allow Syria to reintegrate into financial systems like SWIFT, resume oil exports, and attract foreign investment, particularly from Gulf allies like Saudi Arabia, which has expressed interest in funding reconstruction projects. For example, Riyadh plans to invest in energy and transportation, per recent reports. Neighboring countries like Turkey also anticipate benefits, with Turkish banks and companies poised to operate in Syria following the economic opening. For the United States, this decision offers multiple benefits. First, it shifts the financial burden of reconstruction to countries like Saudi Arabia, sparing Washington from committing its own resources. Second, it promotes Syria's stabilization, which could reduce migration flows and extremism, enhancing regional security and, by extension, U.S. interests. Third, it counters the influence of Iran and Russia in Syria, strengthening the U.S. position as a key mediator. However, the lifting of sanctions comes with conditions. Trump set 5 requirements, the primary one being that Syria normalize relations with Israel, according to reports. This reflects a strategy to reshape Middle Eastern alliances, though it faces significant historical and political obstacles. A third point was Trump's meeting with Ahmad al-Shara, Syria's de facto leader, in Riyadh. Lasting over 30 minutes, this meeting aimed to advance Syria's normalization, with Trump urging Damascus to engage with Israel. If successful, the United States could solidify its role as an architect of a new regional order, but success hinges on the willingness of local actors and the management of historical tensions. The fourth benefit for the United States is strengthening Saudi Arabia as a counterweight to Iran. In Riyadh, Trump and the Crown Prince discussed curbing Iran's nuclear program through economic pressure and military cooperation. A robust Saudi Arabia allows the United States to maintain influence in the Gulf with a reduced military presence, saving costs. It also ensures stability in the oil market, critical for the U.S. economy. Finally, the visit bolsters Trump's image as a global leader, a domestic political advantage. The economic deals and sanctions lift can be framed as victories for jobs and security, resonating with voters in a competitive electoral context. However, there are risks. Reliance on Saudi investments could limit U.S. autonomy in foreign policy. The sanctions lift, while welcomed by Arab states and the UN, could spark tensions if Syria fails to meet Trump's conditions or if rivals like Iran react. Additionally, Syria's transition remains fragile following the collapse of the Assad regime in December 2024, with rebel groups tied to Turkey and internal tensions complicating stability. In summary, Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia and the lifting of sanctions on Syria aim to position the United States as an economic and strategic leader. Benefits include economic growth, regional influence, and financial savings, but they require careful risk management. Trump departed Riyadh for Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, continuing his bid to shape the Middle East's future. What do you think of these moves? Do you believe the long-term benefits will outweigh the challenges? Share your perspective in the comments. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next analysis.